Queremos esta, papá. Las gemelas del vaquero insistieron mientras el pueblo susurraba. La viuda era demasiado ancha para casarse. ¿No te quedas aquí? Nora Asford estaba de pie en la cocina de sus padres, aferrando una vieja maleta de alfombra mientras las palabras de su padre la cortaban como un cuchillo. Papá, por favor, susurró. ¿Puedo trabajar? ¿Puedo ayudar con? La voz de su madre fue afilada como vidrio roto. Ha sido una carga desde el día en que naciste. Te casamos a los 17 pensando que por fin serías el problema de otro. Y ahora estás de vuelta. La garganta de Nora se cerró. Thomas murió de fiebre. No importa de qué murió, la interrumpió su padre. Lo que importa es lo que dice la gente. Dicen que lo mataste de tanto trabajo. Dicen que tu peso le rompió la espalda. Dicen que Dios lo castigó por casarse con una mujer como tú. Su madre cruzó los brazos. Los vecinos se burlan de nosotros. La iglesia murmura. No podemos tenerte aquí. Le metió un boleto de tren en las manos temblorosas. Hay un carro de novias por correo que sale hacia el territorio de Riewood. Te vas con ellas. Pero yo no soy una novia, dijo Nora, con la voz apenas audible. Nadie te quiere. Entonces encontrarás trabajo, espetó su madre. Una cocina, una pensión, lo que sea. Pero no te quedas aquí. Su padre la agarró del brazo y la arrastró hacia la puerta. El tren sale en 1 hora. No vuelvas. La puerta se cerró de golpe detrás de ella. Nora se quedó sola en el frío amanecer, con lágrimas corriendo por su rostro. La habían echado otra vez. En la estación de tren, 3 jóvenes con vestidos coloridos reían cerca del andén. Las novias por correo, bonitas y esperanzadas. Miraron a Nora y susurraron. ¿Quién es esa? No parece una novia. Tal vez va como ganado. Las risas estallaron. Nora apretó más fuerte su maleta, con los ojos fijos en el suelo. El jefe de estación gritó. Todas las novias a bordo para el territorio de Riewood. Nora dio un paso hacia el tren. Una voz de hombre resonó entre la multitud. Espera. ¿Quién la dejó subir? Va a hundir todo el tren. Más risas. El rostro de Nora ardió. Pero subió al tren y encontró un asiento en el rincón trasero, lejos de las otras mujeres. Mientras el tren se alejaba, ella miró por la ventana el pueblo que nunca volvería a ver. Tenía 23 años, era viuda, no deseada y completamente sola. Horas después, el tren llegó a la estación de Riewood. El andén estaba lleno de rancheros y gente del pueblo, todos esperando ver a las novias. Las 3 jóvenes bajaron primero, recibidas con sonrisas y sombreros levantados. Luego bajó Nora. La multitud se quedó en silencio. Un ranchero murmuró. ¿Quién es esa? No está en la lista. Otro dijo. El jefe de estación revisó su portapapeles, frunciendo el ceño. Estábamos esperando 3 novias, no 4. La voz de Nora fue apenas un susurro. No soy una novia. Viajaba a casa de mi hermana en Silver Pine. Solo necesitaba parar aquí para. Una voz de mujer cortó el aire, cargada de burla. ¿O esperabas que algún tonto desesperado te aceptara? Las risas recorrieron la multitud. Mírenle el tamaño. Es demasiado ancha para casarse. Alguien empezó a cantar bajito. Demasiado ancha para casarse. Demasiado ancha para casarse. Otros se unieron. Las manos de Nora temblaron. Dio un paso atrás hacia el tren, deseando desaparecer. Entonces 2 vocecitas cortaron el ruido. Queremos esta, papá. Todos se volvieron. 2 niñitas idénticas, gemelas con vestidos azul brillante, se soltaron de la multitud y corrieron directo más allá de las novias bonitas. Se detuvieron frente a Nora, mirándola con ojos grandes y serios. Es perfecta, dijo la primera. Se parece a la mamá del libro de cuentos. La segunda tomó la mano de Nora. Por favor, papá, la queremos. Los jadeos se extendieron por la multitud. El jefe de estación rió nervioso. Niñas, esa no es una de las novias. Ella solo es. Queremos esta. Gritó más fuerte la primera niña. Del fondo de la multitud, una figura alta avanzó. El hombre era de hombros anchos y aspecto rudo, con el rostro ensombrecido por el ala de su sombrero. Sus botas resonaron con pasos pesados y deliberados sobre el andén de madera. La multitud se abrió a su paso. Se detuvo frente a Nora y la miró desde arriba. Su expresión era indescifrable. Ni cruel, ni amable, solo evaluadora. ¿Necesitas un lugar donde quedarte? Su voz era baja y áspera. Nora tartamudeó. Yo no, iba a. Pregunta simple. ¿Necesitas un lugar o no? Sí, susurró ella. Entonces vendrás con nosotros. El jefe de estación balbuceó. Caleb, no puedes hablar en serio. Los ojos de Caleb no se apartaron de Nora. Mis hijas han elegido. Se dio la vuelta y caminó hacia un carro al borde del andén. Las gemelas tomaron las manos de Nora y la jalaron hacia adelante. Detrás de ellos, la multitud estalló en susurros. Se la lleva. Esas niñas han perdido la cabeza. Se lo comerá todo en casa. Nora tropezó tras él, con el corazón latiéndole con fuerza, sin poder procesar lo que acababa de pasar. El pueblo la había burlado, la había rechazado, pero dos niñitas la habían elegido y su padre las había dejado. El carro rodó sobre terreno irregular, con las ruedas crujiendo en cada curva. El polvo se levantaba en suaves nubes detrás de ellos y el sol de la tarde tardía proyectaba sombras largas sobre la pradera. Las gemelas se sentaron a cada lado de Nora, sus cuerpecitos pegados al de ella, su charla llenando el silencio como canto de pájaros. ¿Cómo te llamas? Preguntó la primera niña, inclinando la cabeza. Nora, respondió ella suavemente. Yo soy Lily, dijo la niña, sonriendo. Y esa es Rose. Somos gemelas. Ya lo veo. Dalló Nora, con una leve sonrisa tirando de sus labios. A pesar de todo, Rose se acercó más, bajando la voz a un susurro. ¿Te gustan los caballos? Yo, supongo que sí. Bien, dijo Lily, asintiendo con seriedad. Porque papá tiene muchos caballos y vacas y gallinas, y a veces las gallinas son malas, pero papá dice que solo protegen sus huevos. Nora miró hacia la parte delantera del carro. Caleb iba sentado con la espalda recta, las riendas sueltas en las manos, los ojos fijos en el camino. No había dicho una sola palabra desde que salieron de la estación. Su silencio era pesado, no cruel, pero impenetrable, como un muro que ella no podía ver por encima. Rose tiró de la manga de Nora. ¿Sabes trenzar el cabello? Sí sé, dijo Nora. Mamá nos trenzaba el cabello, dijo Lily en voz baja. Pero ya se fue. El pecho de Nora se apretó. Lo siento. Rose levantó la mirada hacia ella con ojos grandes e inocentes. Está bien. Papá dice que está con los ángeles. Pero la extrañamos. Seguro que sí, susurró Nora. El carro golpeó un bache, sacudiéndolos a todos. Nora se agarró del costado para estabilizarse y la voz de Caleb cortó el aire por primera vez desde que habían salido. Agárrense ahí atrás. Su tono fue plano. Directo, no amable, pero tampoco cálido. Nora tragó saliva y asintió, aunque él no podía verla. El rancho apareció a la vista cuando el sol se hundía en el horizonte, pintando el cielo de tonos naranja y rosa. Era más grande de lo que Nora había esperado, una casa sólida con un amplio porche, un granero que se inclinaba un poco a un lado, cercas que se extendían lejos en la distancia, algunas caídas, algunas rotas. La ropa colgaba flácida en una cuerda, medio seca y olvidada. El huerto estaba invadido de maleza. Era un lugar que alguna vez había sido cuidado, pero ya no. Caleb detuvo el carro cerca de la casa y bajó sin decir una palabra. Las gemelas saltaron detrás de él, jalando a Nora. Él caminó hasta el porche, abrió la puerta y entró. Nora dudó en el umbral, insegura. Vamos, dijo Lily, tirando de su mano. Dentro, La casa estaba oscura y silenciosa. El polvo flotaba en los rayos de luz que se colaban por las ventanas. Los platos estaban apilados en la palangana. Una camisa colgaba sobre el respaldo de una silla. El piso estaba barrido, pero apenas. Caleb señaló hacia un pasillo estrecho. Las habitaciones están allá. Segunda puerta. Puedes quedarte ahí. Nora asintió. Gracias. Él no respondió. Solo se dio la vuelta y caminó hacia la cocina, con las botas pesadas sobre el suelo de madera. Rose tiró de la falda de Nora. Ven a ver nuestra habitación. Las niñas la llevaron por el pasillo, charlando emocionadas, sus voces un contraste brillante con la pesadez que flotaba en la casa. Su habitación era pequeña pero ordenada. 2 camas estrechas con colchas que habían visto días mejores. Una muñeca de madera descansaba sobre una almohada, con la cara pintada desvaída. Un espejo agrietado colgaba en la pared. Aquí es donde dormimos, dijo Lily con orgullo. Es muy bonito, dijo Nora suavemente. Rose se subió a su cama y palmeó el espacio a su lado. ¿Te sientas con nosotras? Nora se sentó y las niñas se acurrucaron cerca, una a cada lado. Cuéntanos un cuento, dijo Lily. No conozco muchos cuentos, admitió Nora. Está bien, dijo Rose. Solo inventa uno. Y Nora lo hizo. Les contó sobre una niña que vivía en un valle donde las flores crecían más altas que los árboles y donde cada estrella en el cielo tenía un nombre. Las niñas escucharon, con los ojos muy abiertos, hasta que su respiración se volvió lenta y sus cabezas pesaron contra sus brazos. Nora levantó la mirada y se quedó helada. Caleb estaba en la puerta, en silencio, observando. Sus ojos se encontraron solo un momento. Su expresión no cambió, pero algo brilló allí. Algo que ella no pudo nombrar. Luego se dio la vuelta y se alejó. A la mañana siguiente, Nora despertó antes del amanecer. No podía dormir. Su mente estaba demasiado ruidosa, su cuerpo demasiado inquieto. Se vistió en silencio y salió de su habitación. La casa seguía dormida. Se movió por la cocina, sus ojos recorriendo el desastre, platos con costras, la estufa fría, la cesta de costura intacta en la esquina. No podía quedarse sentada. Nunca podía. Así que encendió la estufa, llenó la palangana de agua y empezó a fregar. Cuando salió el sol, los platos estaban limpios. La mesa, limpia. El piso, barrido. Las gemelas aparecieron en la puerta, frotándose los ojos. «¿Estás despierta?», dijo Lily, sorprendida. «Sí», dijo Nora, sonriendo. «¿Estás haciendo el desayuno?», preguntó Rose con esperanza. «Puedo». Encontró harina, huevos y un poco de tocino. Cocinó mientras las niñas se sentaban a la mesa, balanceando las piernas, observándola con ojos brillantes y curiosos. Cuando Caleb entró del granero, se detuvo en la puerta. Su mirada recorrió la cocina limpia, la comida en la mesa, las gemelas sentadas con platos llenos y ya comiendo. «No tenías que hacer esto», dijo. «Lo sé», respondió Nora en voz baja. «Pero quise hacerlo». Él no respondió. Solo se sentó, se sirvió y comió en silencio. Pero Nora lo notó, no devolvió la comida. No le dijo que parara. No dijo que era una invitada y que las invitadas no trabajaban. Solo comió. Y cuando terminó, se levantó, se puso el sombrero y se detuvo en la puerta. «Si vas a quedarte», dijo, sin mirarla, «necesitarás botas. Las tuyas no durarán una semana». Luego salió. Nora se quedó allí, con un paño de cocina en las manos, el corazón latiéndole un poco más rápido. No era amabilidad. No exactamente. Pero tampoco era crueldad. Y para Nora Ashford, eso era más de lo que había tenido en mucho tiempo. Los días se fundieron unos con otros, medidos en quehaceres, sudor y el ritmo lento y constante de la vida del rancho. Nora trabajaba desde el amanecer hasta el anochecer. Fregaba pisos hasta que le dolían las rodillas. Acarreaba agua del pozo hasta que le ardían los hombros. Arreglaba cercas, arrancaba malezas del huerto y amasaba masa hasta que le dolían las manos. No pedía descanso, no se quejaba, no esperaba elogios. She just worked because work was the only language she knew, the only way she'd ever been allowed to prove her worth. And Caleb watched, not openly, not obviously, but she felt his eyes on her when she carried the laundry to the line, when she hauled feed to the horses. When she bent over the garden, dirt under her nails, sweat on her brow. He didn't speak much, just nodded when she finished a task. Left tools where she could reach them, set a pair of worn boots on her doorstep one morning without a word. The twins, though they filled every silence, they followed Nora everywhere, chattering like sparrows, asking endless questions, helping in their own clumsy, honest way. One afternoon, Nora knelt in the garden pulling weeds. Lily sat beside her holding a basket. "Why do weeds grow?" Lily asked. "Because they're stubborn," Nora said, yanking a particularly thick root free. "They don't care if they're wanted or not. They just grow." Rosie, sitting on the other side, frowned. "That's sad." "Why is that sad?" Nora asked. "Because nobody wants them," Rose said. "But they're just trying to live." Nora paused, her hands stilling in the dirt. She looked at the little girl, her chest tightening. "You're right," she said softly. "They are." Lily leaned closer. "Do you think weeds know they're weeds?" Nora smiled faintly. "I don't know. Maybe they think they're flowers." "Then we should let them stay," Rose said firmly. "Maybe a few," Nora agreed. "But not all, or there won't be room for the vegetables." Lily nodded seriously. "That makes sense." From the barn, Caleb's voice called out. "Girls, let her work. We're helping." Lily shouted back. There was a pause, then quieter, almost amused. "I'm sure you are." One evening, Nora was in the kitchen kneading bread when Caleb came in. It smelled like leather and dust and horses. He poured himself water from the pitcher, drank it down, and set the cup on the table. "You don't have to do all this," he said. Nora didn't look up. "I know." "Then why do you?" She pressed her palms into the dough, folding it over, pressing again. "Because I need to what?" "Earn my place." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat. "You already have a place." Nora's hand stilled. She looked at him surprised. His expression was unreadable as always. But his eyes, they weren't cold. They were steady. "Certain. You don't owe me anything," he said. "You're not a servant here." "Then what am I?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, his jaw working as though the words were stuck somewhere deep. "You're someone my daughters chose," he said finally. "And they don't choose wrong." Nora's throat tightened. She turned back to the dough, blinking fast. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb stood, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked to the door, then paused. "My wife," he said, his voice low. "She died 2 years ago. Fever took her fast. I couldn't save her." Nora's breath caught. "The girls don't remember much," he continued. "Used pieces. Her voice, her smell, the way she braided their hair." He looked at Nora and for the first time she saw the crack in his armor. "They haven't smiled like this since she died," he said. "Not until you came." Nora's eyes burned. "I'm not trying to replace her." "I know," Caleb said. "But you're giving them something I couldn't, and for that, I'm grateful." He turned and walked out before she could respond. Nora stood there, her hands covered in flour, her heart pounding, and for the first time since Thomas died, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt like she mattered. A week later, the sky turned dark. Caleb stood on the porch, eyes fixed on the horizon. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and something heavier. Something dangerous. "Storm's coming," he said. Nora stepped beside him, wiping her hands on her apron. "A bad one?" "Could be." The twins ran out onto the porch, excited. "Can we watch the lightning, Daddy?" "No," Caleb said firmly. You stay inside. But inside now. His tone left no room for argument. The girls obeyed reluctantly, trailing back into the house. Caleb looked at Nora. You should stay in too. What about the cattle? She asked. Ella handle it. You can't do it alone. His jaw tightened. Ebe done it before. Not tonight, Nora said, her voice steady. Tonight you have help. He stared at her, something shifting in his eyes. Then he nodded once. Get a coat. It's going to get rough. The storm hit like a fist. Rain poured down in sheets, cold and relentless. The wind howled, tearing at clothes and hair and breath. Caleb and Nora ran toward the pasture where the cattle were already panicking, eyes rolling white, hooves pounding the mud. They'll stampede if we don't calm them. Caleb shouted over the wind. Nora didn't hesitate. She ran toward the nearest cow, arms wide, voice low and steady. Easy, easy now. You're all right. The cow huffed, shifted, but didn't bolt. Caleb watched her, stand, then move to the next one. Together, they worked, guiding, calming, moving the herd back toward the shelter of the barn. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning split the sky, and then a scream. Nora's head whipped around. Lily and Rose stood at the edge of the pasture, soaked, with aged, frozen in fear. What are you doing out here? Caleb roared. We wanted to help. Lily cried. A cow broke loose, charging toward the girls. Nora didn't think. She just ran. She threw herself between the cow and the twins, arms out, voice loud and sharp. No, stop. Stop. The cow skidded, hooves sliding in the mud, and veered away. Nora collapsed to her knees, the twins crashing into her, sobbing. Caleb was there a moment later, pulling them all into his arms. You could have been killed, he said, his voice shaking. Nora looked up at him, rain streaming down her face. So could you, she said. For a long moment, they just knelt there in the mud, the storm raging around them, and something between them shifted. Something neither of them could name yet, but something real. The storm passed, leaving the land washed clean, but the air heavy with chill. By morning, both twins were pale and coughing, worn thin from the night's terror. Nora moved between their beds like a shadow, changing cloths, stirring broth, her eyes red from sleeplessness. Caleb stood in the doorway, saying nothing. Ade offered help, but she had only shaken her head. They just need watching, she'd whispered. For 2 long days, she hardly left them. When Lily's small hand reached for hers, Nora clasped it without hesitation. You rest now, she murmured. Lily blinked sleepily. You'll stay here, won't you? I will, Nora said. All night. Beside her, Rose stirred. Do mamas do that? Stay all night. Nori's throat caught. The good ones try to. Rose smiled faintly and drifted back to sleep. The fire burned low as the fever eased. Nora sat slumped in the chair, exhaustion softening every line of her face. Caleb watched from the doorway, arms crossed, the lantern light flickering over him. He said nothing, only watched as she brushed hair from the girls' foreheads, her movements gentle. Sure. Outside, the wind was quiet again. Inside, the only sound was the twins' slow, steady breathing. And in that stillness, something unspoken settled between them. Trust and the quiet beginning of belonging. The days that followed were different. Caleb didn't just watch anymore. He worked beside her, talked to her, asked her questions. Where did you learn to handle cattle? He asked one afternoon as they mended a fence together. My husband had a small farm, Nora said. I helped with everything. It didn't give me much choice. Caleb glanced at her. You didn't love him. It wasn't a question. Nora hammered a nail into the post, her hand steady. No, I didn't. But I tried to be a good wife. I'm sure you were. He didn't think so. Caleb stopped working, turned to face her. Then he was a fool. Nora looked up at him, surprised. His expression was serious, his eyes steady. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, he said. And anyone who couldn't see that doesn't deserve you. Nora's chest tightened. She looked away, blinking fast. Thank you, she whispered. Caleb reached out, his hand brushing hers, just for a moment. Then he turned back to the fence and kept working. One afternoon, the twins begged Nora to let them help with biscuits. She finally gave in, tying aprons that were far too big and rolling up their sleeves. Lily poured flour with great ceremony. Too much, too fast. A white cloud burst upward, coating everything. Nora gasped, blinking through the powder. Her hair and dress ghosted white. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the twins erupted in laughter. You look like a snow lady. Rose sketched, clapping her hands. Nora tried to glare, but couldn't stop smiling. Due to our trouble. Daddy, Lily shouted toward the open doorway. Come see what we did. Caleb appeared, drawn by the commotion. He took one look at Nora, flour in her hair, twins grinning up at her, and started laughing deep and unguarded. You planning to bake or start a blizzard? He asked. Both, apparently, Nora said, wiping her face with the back of her wrist. You're next, Daddy. Lily declared. And before he could move, Rose flung a handful of flowers straight at him. It caught him square in the chest. The twins froze for a heartbeat. Silence. Then Nora's laugh burst out bright and helpless. Caleb's brow arched slowly. He stepped forward, eyes on her. That's so, he said softly. Then he dipped his hand in the bowl and brushed a streak of flour gently across her cheek. The twins screamed with laughter. Nora's breath caught because for a moment his hand lingered. His thumb brushed her skin, not teasing now, but soft, deliberate. Their eyes met through the drifting flour dust, and the noise around them faded. Something shifted. The air between them turned still, tender, charged, and unspoken. Then Rose broke it, giggling. Daddy likes Nora. Lily gasped. We told you he does. Caleb coughed, straightening. All right, enough mischief. What's up for supper? The twins ran off, still giggling, leaving behind a trail of white footprints. Nora turned back to the table, wiping her hands, trying not to smile. You didn't have to join their nonsense, she said softly. Caleb's voice was low behind her. Didn't mind it. She looked over her shoulder, and there it was again, that quiet warmth in his eyes. Not laughter now, something deeper. For a long second, neither moved. And in that small flour-dusted kitchen, with the smell of bread and laughter still in the air, something fragile and beautiful began to take root. Sunday morning arrived with golden light and the smell of fresh bread. Nora dressed carefully, smoothing her best dress, hands trembling. Caleb had asked her to come to church with him and the girls. Not ordered, asked. And she'd said yes. The twins were bright-eyed, their hair freshly braided, dresses clean. You look pretty, Nora. Lily said, so do you, Nora, smiled. Caleb appeared in the doorway, hat in hand, expression unreadable. Ready? She nodded. The ride into town was quiet. The twins chattered. Caleb and Nora did not. The silence between them carried weight of things felt but not yet spoken. When they reached the church, heads turned. Whispers rose immediately. That's her, the one from the station. She's still there living with him. Unmarried. Shameful. Nora's stomach twisted, but she lifted her chin. Caleb walked beside her, steady and protective, his hand hovering near her back without touching. The twins clutched her hands, oblivious to the stairs. They took a pew near the back. The sermon began, but Nora couldn't focus. She felt the judgment in every glance, every murmur. Then, halfway through, the Reverend paused. Me retorne, he said, voice echoing through the room. There has been concern about the woman living under your roof. Silence. Caleb's jaw flexed. Is that so? We're thinking of propriety, the Reverend said. And of your daughters. Surely you see how this arrangement appears. Appears to who? Caleb asked, voice calm but cutting. To the community, to God. Caleb stood. The twins looked up wide-eyed. Let me make something clear. I said, steady as iron. Nora Ashford saved my daughter's lives. She's worked my ranch, cared for my girls when I couldn't, and asked for nothing in return. The Reverend shifted. Caleb didn't stop. This town mocked her the day she arrived. Called her names, made her feel small. But my daughters saw what none of you did. They saw her heart. It turned, eyes softening on Nora. And so did I. Nora's breath hitched, tears glimmering in her eyes. Caleb faced the congregation again. If anyone here has a problem with her staying, they can take it up with me, but I won't let her be shamed. Not anymore. Lily suddenly stood on the pew, her voice bright and sure. We want her to be our mama. Rosie stood beside her forever. The church froze. Then from the front, an older woman rose. He was wrong, she said quietly. He judged her. I'm sorry. Another woman followed. So was I. One by one, others stood. Not all, but enough. The Reverend cleared his throat. I suppose that settles it. Caleb reached for Nora's hand. Together, they walked out, the twins hurrying after them. Outside, under the wide blue sky, Caleb stopped. Nora Ashford, he said, voice rough. I'm not a man of fancy words. But I know what I want, and I want you. Her heart stilled. Not because my daughters chose you. Not because you fit into this place, but because you're the strongest, kindest, most stubborn woman I've ever known. And I don't want to spend another day without you. Then he dropped to one knee. The twins gasped. Will you marry me? Tears spilled freely down Nora's face. Yes, she whispered, then stronger. Yes, I will. He rose and pulled her into his arms. The twins threw themselves around them both laughing and crying. From the doorway, the townsfolk watched. Some smiled, some whispered, some turned away. But Nora didn't care because for the first time in her life, she wasn't too much. She was enough and she was home. And so Nora Ashford found what she'd been searching for her whole life. Not just a home, but a family that chose her. Not in spite of who she was, but because of it. The town's whispers faded into silence. The shame dissolved like morning mist. And in its place stood something stronger, something unbreakable. Because sometimes the people who see our worth are the ones we least expect. And sometimes the smallest voices speak the loudest truth. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in these women. And thank you for reminding us all that worth isn't something that needs to be earned. It simply is. Subscribe for more. And we'll see you in the next.